I never thought the moment that changed my life would start with a laugh. Not a cruel one, just that kind of laugh rich people make when they're sure they're safe. You know the type. Polished, well-fed, completely unaware that the person they're underestimating is the one they should be afraid of. My son speaks 9 languages, my father said once, back when we still thought that mattered. He said it to a neighbor, proud, like maybe words could erase the fact that he scrubbed toilets for a living. But the truth is, people don't care what you know if your hands smell like bleach. So, yeah, I speak 9 languages. That's how I introduced myself in that room, standing next to a tray of coffee cups and untouched croissants. The CEO laughed. The whole boardroom joined in, the way people do when someone with a badge says something too impossible to be true. They thought I was joking. I didn't correct them. Not yet. That morning, I wasn't supposed to be in that meeting at all. I was the janitor's son, the temp filling in for maintenance because their usual guy got sick. I was 24, 2 semesters short of a linguistics degree I couldn't afford anymore. My dad's heart had given out the year before. Mid-shift in the same building, mop still in his hand. They sent flowers. No card. Just flowers. I took his job the next week. Somebody had to. But that day, they had some kind of emergency meeting with the international board. The interpreter they'd hired didn't show. They were panicking, snapping at the receptionist, barking orders like lost dogs in designer suits. "Does anyone here speak Mandarin?" the CEO demanded. Silence. "Japanese?" Nothing. He groaned, rubbed his temples. "We're paying these consultants $200,000 a quarter, and nobody can order coffee in Shanghai." I was mopping near the door, pretending not to exist. Years of being invisible had trained me well. Then one of the assistants, Anna, looked at me like people do when they're desperate enough to talk to the help. "You," she said, "you speak any of these languages?" I looked up. 9 of them. That's when they laughed. The CEO, tall, gray suit, gold cufflinks, grinned like he'd just been handed a joke to lighten the mood. 9? You mean like English plus sarcasm? His friends chuckled. I didn't. I just wiped the edge of the table and said, "English, Mandarin, Japanese, Korean, Arabic, French, Spanish, Russian, and German. Pick one." The room went quiet, just for a second, the kind of silence that feels heavier than noise. "Fine," he said, still smirking. "Tell them." He nodded at the screen where the foreign executives were waiting. "That we're having technical difficulties, and will begin in 5 minutes." So I did. Perfectly. In Mandarin, then in Japanese, then in Korean, because he'd said them, plural. The men on the screen started nodding, smiling even. They replied in kind, thanking me for the update, saying they'd wait. When I turned back, half the room was staring like they'd just seen a dog play piano. The CEO cleared his throat. "Huh? Lucky guess." I looked him in the eye. "Luck doesn't conjugate verbs, sir." Anna tried not to smile. Someone coughed, and for the first time that morning, the laughter stopped. That was the first crack. The sound of a door opening just a little, enough for air to get in. They told me to stay, just in case, the CEO said, just in case the professionals didn't show. I knew what that meant. You're cheap, and you'll do. So I stood in the back, notebook in hand, translating quietly under my breath as the meeting started. Contracts, projections, percentages, the kind of language people think is universal until they realize money doesn't speak the same everywhere. 10 minutes in, their translator finally joined the call. He stumbled through his sentences, misread idioms, and mistranslated figures by entire decimals. I winced. So did the clients. The CEO didn't notice. He was too busy talking over everyone, pretending to understand. When one of the Japanese board members frowned and asked for clarification, I couldn't help it. I stepped forward and corrected the translation. Politely, precisely. The CEO turned toward me, his face tightening. "What did you just say?" "I said," I repeated in English, "the agreement is for 12%, not 20. The phrasing in Japanese implies interest rate, not equity. It's It's a different character. He blinked, realizing how close they'd just come to signing a deal worth millions under the wrong terms. The room fell silent again. That's when Anna mouthed, "Holy sht." And that's when he realized I wasn't just the janitor's son. But that was just the beginning. I didn't know it yet, but that decision would cost them everything. The CEO waved me closer like I was a lucky charm you keep in your pocket. "Just sit here," he said, pulling out a chair at the end of the table. Not at the table, near it. Close enough to be used, far enough to be ignored. I sat, pen ready, eyes on the screen. He introduced himself to the board overseas with that booming, confident voice executives practice in front of mirrors. The clients replied, measured and polite. I kept pace, sliding meaning across languages like plates across a counter. Clean, quick, unbroken. It should have felt good. It did for about 3 minutes. Then the CEO started paraphrasing me. He'd ask a question. I'd translate. They'd answer. He'd look at his people and repeat my words as if they'd come from him. "What they're saying is," followed by the exact phrasing I'd just used. Heads nodded, pens moved, and the credit evaporated in the air between us like steam off a kettle. Half an hour in, a French director asked for clarifications on a penalty clause. Their contractor translator mangled the sentence into something that implied a legal admission. I corrected it in French first, and then in English. Crisp, careful, exact. The director on the screen smiled with relief and said, "Merci, monsieur." He paused, waiting for my name. I opened my mouth, but the CEO cut in. "Our team has it covered," he said smoothly, then pivoted to negotiating the numbers as if I'd disappeared. The director's smile flattened. He looked back at me on the tiny screen. I looked down at my notes like a good assistant. When the call ended, 2 hours, 3 countries, and one almost catastrophic decimal later, the room exhaled. Hands clapped backs. People told the CEO he'd handled it brilliantly. He basked. Then he turned to me with that benevolent expression powerful men put on for holiday charity photos. "Good hustle," he said. "Grab yourself lunch on us." He slid a company-branded gift card across the table like he was tossing a dog a treat. Anna was watching. She didn't smile this time. I looked at the card. $50. 2 hours of translation that would have billed out at thousands if they'd hired anyone reputable, and I got a $5 with a 0. I slid it back. "I'm on shift," I said. "I'll take my break later." He blinked, surprised I hadn't wagged my tail. "Suit yourself," he said, "but we might need you again this afternoon." HR found me in the hallway 10 minutes later. "Quick thing," said a woman named Dana, crisp blouse, tablet in her arms like a shield. "If you're going to interpret, we need you to sign an addendum. Just standard stuff. Confidentiality, contractor acknowledgement. No expectation of compensation beyond your current hourly role." "No expectation of," I started. "Beyond your current hourly role," she repeated, pointing at the clause with her stylus like she was explaining a rule to a child in a museum. "We can revisit later if this becomes recurring." "It already is recurring," I said. "You hired an interpreter. He didn't show. I covered so you didn't crater a deal." Her smile didn't move. "We appreciate your can-do spirit." I read the addendum. It also said that any proprietary methods or materials I developed while interpreting belonged to the company. I wasn't building software. I was conjugating verbs. But I knew a land grab when I saw one. I thumbed the page forward to the signature line and didn't sign. "I'll keep mopping," I said. "Of course," she said, relief softening her shoulders. "We value people who know their lane." Back in the service closet, the smell of pine cleaner hit like a memory. My dad's jacket still hung on the hook where I'd left it after they packed his locker. He kept a pen in the chest pocket. I took it out, clicked it once, and put it back. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was something quieter. Something that holds its breath and counts. At noon, Anna appeared in the doorway with 2 coffees, and a look I recognized from servers who've watched customers humiliate dishwashers and tip double to balance the world. She handed me a cup. "You were great," she said. They know it, whether they admit it or not. Doesn't matter, I said. It might, she replied. The Japanese director asked for your contact after the call. He emailed the CEO, CC'd me by accident. What did the CEO say? He said he'd loop his team. She lifted her brows. Guess who isn't on the team? I sipped. I'm maintenance. You're the reason we didn't get sued before lunch, she said. By the way, there's a second session at 3 with the German subsidiary. They're not thrilled about the earn-out language. You coming? I'm on the floor schedule, I said. Anna glanced at my broom, then back at me. You can translate and push a broom in the same day. Apparently, we're a company of multi-hyphenates. She lowered her voice. I'm not supposed to tell you, but record your screen if you go in, or at least keep your notes. If something blows up, you'll want receipts. Why would something blow up? I asked. She looked toward the boardroom door like it might grow ears. Because he hates owing, she said, and right now he owes you. At 3, I went back in. Not because HR asked, not because the CEO waved me in like a valet, but because the German CFO on screen opened with, Before we begin, we'd like to thank the interpreter from this morning. The clarity prevented a very expensive misunderstanding. His English was perfect. He didn't need to say it in German for me to hear the message. We saw you. The CEO chuckled like compliments were confetti thrown in his general direction. Our team is world class, he said. He didn't look at me. The German legal counsel switched to her native language and dove into a clause about representations. The company's translator, now in the room, sweating through a rented suit, translated subject to as subjected by. It flipped the meaning. I corrected it, neutral and quick. She nodded to me on the screen, then, because she was the kind of person who keeps track of details, said in German, Thank you, mister. My name is Eli, I said in German. It was the first time I'd said my name out loud in that room all day. She repeated it back correctly. Then she smiled at me, and only me, tiny, precise, the sort of acknowledgement that doesn't need a LinkedIn post. Mini catharsis. Small, but real. The call ended clean. Paperwork queued up, millions stable on the right side of the decimal this time. When we dropped, the CEO pushed back from the table. All right, he said, clapping once. Good work. Let's move on. He didn't look at me. He looked past me, at the mess I'd made by existing. Eli, he said finally, like he'd had to pull the syllable out of his throat. Why don't you head back to your duties? He gestured vaguely, the way people gesture when they don't know where the brooms live. And, Dana will get you that contractor paperwork. I didn't sign it, I said. A few heads turned. He smiled without teeth. You will if you want to keep helping. I helped today, I said. For free. Exactly, he said. Team player. Anna made a sound like she'd swallowed a laugh, and it had cut her on the way down. I left the room. In the hall, Dana was waiting with her tablet. Quick signature, she said, hopeful this time. We'll take care of you. How? Gift card, she said, like that solved physics. I looked at the clause again. No pay. No credit. All liability. I'll pass, I said. Then you can't interpret, she replied, relief returning like a tide. Policy. Understood, I said. That should have been the end of it. Go back to the bucket. Go back to the quiet. Let the suits believe they run the building that my father bled in, the building I kept standing when pipes burst and elevators stuck. Let them forget me until the next emergency. That's what they counted on. People who make things work staying small in the corners. But then late afternoon, my phone buzzed with an email from the Japanese director. He'd found my address through a chain of accidental CCs. Eli-san, your precision saved our partnership. Please send your details so we can ensure future communication is efficient. It was formal, graceful, and very, very intentional. A copy went to the CEO, another to legal, another to a partner fund I'd never heard of. I didn't reply, not yet. I printed it. I slid the paper into my father's old locker behind the pen. At 5, as people streamed toward the elevators, the CEO stopped by the service corridor, like a king deigning to tour the stables. Eli, he said, friendly again. Couple of us are heading to the club to celebrate. Why don't you swing by? I'll introduce you around. Introduce me as what? I asked. He didn't miss a beat. As part of our team. What's my role? I asked. Flexible, he said. We'll figure it out. We could figure it out now, I said. His smile thinned. Don't be difficult. I didn't answer. He clapped my shoulder, a controlled, patronizing tap, and walked away whistling. On the way out, Anna stepped into the elevator with me and kept her eyes on the numbers. He's going to bury the credit, she said. Happens all the time. Maybe, I said. Maybe not. The doors opened on the lobby. The security guard nodded at me like he always did. The ICU. Nod, men like my dad traded at dawn. I stepped out into air that smelled like rain on hot pavement, and then silence. The kind that means something's gone wrong. That night, I stopped being the hero. The next morning, the building was different. Same marble floors, same hum of fluorescent lights. But the air had that tension people pretend not to notice when something's cracked behind the walls. The CEO's car was already in his spot. Early. Too early. By 8, everyone in the office knew the Japanese partners had sent a follow-up letter. It was polite, of course. It always is when money's on the table. But the translation was clear enough. We will continue the contract under the assurance that Mr. Eli will oversee all communications between our companies. That single line detonated something silent. They couldn't back out. If they wanted the deal, they needed me. I was mopping the lobby when I saw him walk out of the elevator. CEO, phone to his ear, smiled tight as glass. He saw me, hung up mid-sentence, and approached like a man preparing for small talk he hated. Eli, he said, voice soft enough to sound casual. Got a second? I leaned on the mop handle. Sure. Great. He glanced around, made sure no one was near. You've got some friends upstairs. Impressive. Very impressive. But listen, this isn't how we do things here. We can't have staff freelancing across departments without authorization. It's a liability issue. Translation, I said. You're losing control of the story. His eyes flickered. I'm offering you something better. Join us properly. Entry-level analyst. You'll make more than cleaning floors, that's for sure. But you'll need to understand the chain of command. Chain of command, I repeated. You mean silence. He smiled. Small, sharp. Professionalism. I didn't shake his hand. Send it in writing. He did. The offer came 2 hours later. Assistant to the regional operations manager. Salary half what they paid interns. Clause stating all intellectual contributions belong to the company. I printed it, read it once, and left it on his desk. Unsigned. At noon, Anna cornered me in the break room. He's furious, she whispered. He called legal. Said you're making demands. I'm not, I said. I'm waiting. For what? For them to show who they really are. She looked at me like she already knew how bad it could get. Be careful, she said. Men like him don't get mad. They get methodical. She wasn't wrong. By Wednesday, the schedule changed. My hours were cut. My badge stopped working for upper floors. The janitorial supply orders I'd placed got lost. HR called me in for performance inconsistencies. It was like watching termites work. Quiet, patient, thorough. But then came the storm. Thursday morning, a new email landed in my inbox from the German CFO, CC'd to the CEO, and HR, and the entire European board. To whom it may concern, per our meeting last week, we are forwarding our gratitude to Mr. Eli for ensuring compliance with the revised contract. We insist that all future correspondence and updates be translated and reviewed by him personally, as his precision prevents prior errors made by the external interpreter. The email had attachments, screenshots, notes, timestamped corrections, all traced to me. Anna must have leaked the documents I'd saved, or maybe the directors just wanted receipts. Either way, the effect was nuclear. At 9, the CEO stormed into the maintenance wing. The air changed before he even spoke. What the hell is this? he said, waving his phone like it was a weapon. I think it's a compliment, I said. Don't be cute, he snapped. Do you have any idea how this makes me look? Competent, I said, for hiring the right people. He stepped closer. His cologne hit before his words did. You think you're clever, kid. You think you can play me? I'm not playing, I said. You asked me to clean up a mess. I did. He jabbed a finger at me. You're done here. Turn in your badge. Behind him, the HR rep looked pale. Sir, she said, the foreign partners. I don't care, he barked. He's out. But the HR rep didn't move. She was staring at her tablet. Then she said very carefully, Actually, sir, you might. The Japanese partners just sent an internal memo to legal. They're requesting confirmation that Eli remains assigned to the account. Otherwise, they'll suspend signing. For a full 5 seconds, nobody spoke. The CEO's jaw worked like he was grinding glass. Get out, he said, but it wasn't to me. It was to her. She left fast. Then it was just him and me. You think you've won something? He asked, quieter now. You haven't. You're still the janitor's son. You'll always be the janitor's son. Maybe, I said. But today, the janitor's son is the reason your company's still breathing. He laughed once, harsh. You're a temporary inconvenience, that's all. The board moves on. People forget. I don't think they will this time. Why not? Because I kept the receipts. His eyes changed. A flicker of something primal. Fear, maybe, or calculation. What receipts? The transcripts, the corrections, the contracts you almost tanked. I took a small step forward. And the recording from Tuesday. You recorded the part where you offered me an unpaid role under threat of termination? Yeah, for my records. He tried to smirk. That's illegal. Not in this state. Single-party consent. He went quiet. You could hear the air conditioning hum between us. That's blackmail, he said finally. No, I said. That's insurance. He didn't fire me after that. He couldn't. Not with the partners watching, not with the deal still unsigned. But he stopped speaking to me directly. My schedule returned to normal, except now the supervisors avoided eye contact. And then, Friday evening, a memo went out from the board itself, company-wide. A formal commendation for extraordinary service in interdepartmental crisis mitigation. No names, no faces, just the story. But everyone knew. The janitor's son had made the front page of the intranet. For about an hour, it was quiet. Then Anna messaged me. He's calling an emergency executive meeting. Private. No minutes. You're not invited. I sent back, I wasn't planning to be. And then silence again. The kind that isn't peace. It's pressure before the snap. The storm didn't hit until Monday morning. When I walked in, security stopped me at the door. Sorry, Eli, one of them said. You're temporarily suspended. Investigation pending. For what? I asked. Unauthorized access to internal files. There it was. He'd found his way to fight dirty. I didn't argue. I handed over my badge, nodded once, and walked out. The air outside was cool, heavy with the promise of rain. I sat on the steps and opened my phone. 30 unread emails. One from the Japanese director, another from the German CFO. Both said the same thing in different ways. We heard. I stared at the sky for a while, maybe an hour. The same clouds my father had looked up at on his breaks drifted past, slow and indifferent. And that was when I decided. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was inheritance. They thought they'd silenced me. They hadn't realized I was fluent in something far older than words. Patience. Peace isn't always quiet. Sometimes it sounds like the phone ringing at 7 a.m. on a Monday. The call you've been waiting for without admitting it. It was Anna. You might want to turn on the news, she said. Her voice was calm, but there was a current under it. I could hear office noise in the background, printers, murmurs, the nervous rhythm of a place realizing it's bleeding. I turned on the TV. There he was, the CEO. Same perfect hair, same confident half smile, except this time there was no control in it. The ticker at the bottom read, International partners withdraw. Support amid allegations of fraudulent reporting. Fraudulent reporting, not just a mistake, a lie. The kind that sinks ships. I didn't move, didn't gloat, didn't even breathe for a moment. Anna texted again. They traced it back. Turns out he'd been cooking numbers for quarters, masking losses under revised translations. The partners reviewed everything after your corrections. They caught it all. And then, he's done. The board voted this morning. Interim leadership effective immediately. They're looking for someone who understands cross-cultural communication. I gave them your name. I stared at the message for a long time. The ceiling fan hummed like a second hand ticking through the end of someone else's story. At 9:14, the same HR rep who'd handed me that useless confidentiality addendum months ago called. Eli, she said carefully, the board would like to meet with you. I'm suspended, I said. Not anymore. When I walked into that boardroom again, it felt smaller. Or maybe I just stopped shrinking to fit it. The air smelled of coffee and apology. The chairs were full, but the head of the table was empty. The chairman, an older man with the kind of stillness that comes from surviving 1,000 corporate fires, gestured to the seat across from him. Mr. Eli, he said, on behalf of the board, I want to apologize for what you've experienced here. It appears our previous leadership not only failed to credit your contributions, but used them to conceal material misstatements. That stops now. He paused. We've reviewed the documents you provided. Your accuracy saved us millions. Possibly the company itself. I nodded once. I was just doing my job. He smiled faintly. That's what integrity sounds like. They offered me a new contract. Not in operations, not in janitorial, but as Director of Global Language Strategy. A role that didn't exist before that morning. 6 figures. Benefits. Stock options. I read the offer carefully. Then I said, you don't need to rename a job to make it matter. Just pay people what they're worth and mean your thank yous. He chuckled softly. Duly noted. I signed. By the time I stepped out, Anna was waiting by the elevators. So, she said, how's it feel? I thought about it. Like my dad's watching, I said. She smiled. Then I'd say you passed the test. We stood there in the same hallway where, months ago, I'd been told to know my lane. The same tiles my father had mopped before me. For a moment, the place didn't feel like a cage anymore. It felt like ground reclaimed. Later that afternoon, I walked into the janitorial wing. Not as a cleaner, not as a translator, but as someone who finally had both keys and voice. I opened my father's locker, took his old pen, and clipped it to my suit pocket. I didn't cry. Didn't have to. Some stories don't need an audience to mean something. A week later, the CEO's name disappeared from the website. Rumor said he'd tried to spin a new narrative. Burnout, misunderstanding, corporate politics. The truth didn't follow him. Truth rarely travels with people like that. I stayed, rebuilt the language team from scratch, trained new hires to treat words the way my father treated his floors, with respect, precision, and quiet pride. On Fridays, I still walk past the service closet. The smell of disinfectant, the rattle of the old mop bucket, all still there. Sometimes I'd stop, rest my hand on the handle, and think about the lesson it held. Dignity isn't given, it's kept. People like to say revenge is sweet. It's not. It's just silent. The kind of silence that means something's been set right.